There is a city where time stopped on August 24th, 79 AD, at exactly 1 p.m. Descend toward Pompeii, a wealthy Roman town nestled at the foot of Mount Vesuvius, where cobblestone streets buzz with life. Smell the fresh bread baking in stone ovens. Hear the splash of water in bathhouses, where citizens escape the heat. Feel the warmth from market stalls, where vendors sell figs, wine, and olive oil. Families gather in courtyards for lunch, while children chase each other through narrow streets. Nobody walking these streets knew this was their last day. Then the sky tears open. Mount Vesuvius, the mountain that had provided fertile soil and beautiful views for generations, erupts with a column of ash, rising 20 miles into the atmosphere, higher than any airplane flies today. Darkness falls over Pompeii in the afternoon, like night arriving early. Ash begins to fall like grey snow. Then pumice stones the size of walnuts rain from the black sky. Then rocks. The temperature climbs. The air becomes impossible to breathe. Walk through Pompeii's streets as panic spreads. 18 hours later, a pyroclastic flow, a cloud of superheated gas and volcanic matter traveling at 450 miles per hour, rolls down the mountain like a wall of fire. 2,000 people die in seconds. Pompeii disappears under 20 feet of ash and rock, and it stays buried for 1,700 years. Freeze the moment before the surge arrives. A family huddled in the corner of their house, a man running toward the city gates, a mother pulling her child close. They thought they had time. They thought the danger would pass. They were wrong. This is not just a story about an ancient disaster. This is a story about ignored warnings and human inability to recognize danger until too late. Pompeii had every chance to survive, but the people did what humans always do when danger feels distant and life feels normal. They stayed. This is the town that never escaped, and its lesson belongs to everyone. Soar above the Bay of Naples on the morning of August 24th, 79 AD, and see Pompeii spread beneath you. Approximately 12,000 people living in a wealthy town at the foot of Mount Vesuvius. This is not a doomed place. This is a thriving port city, beautiful and fertile, perfectly positioned for agriculture and trade. Red and white painted buildings line cobblestone streets with stepping stones that let pedestrians cross without getting dirty. Fountains carved with Mercury's face provide fresh water from aqueducts. Inscriptions painted in bright red advertise businesses and gladiator games like ancient billboards. Descend into the streets and feel what a normal day actually felt like. The smell of fresh bread from Thermopolia, the sound of merchants shouting prices in the forum, children running between columns, slaves carrying wine jars, citizens heading to baths for afternoon social routines. In the forum, politicians debate. In the basilica, judges hear cases. In the amphitheater, seating 20,000 people, workers prepare for gladiator games. Nothing feels wrong. Nothing suggests that in hours, this city will be erased. Pompeii was founded in the 7th century BC by Oscans, became a Greek colony, conquered by Romans in 80 BC, making it multicultural. The city features an orthogonal grid, with Cardo and Decumanus roads intersecting at the Forum. Wealthy families live in Domus Romana homes with atrium and peristylum courtyards closest to the Forum. Imagine waking up where public fountains provide free water, Bathhouses function as social clubs, and your daily routine has been the same for generations. You have no reason to believe today will be different. The mountain has always been there, but the mountain watching over the city is not a mountain. It is a volcano, and people of Pompeii do not know the difference. Pompeii felt safe because it had always been safe, but danger was visible, sending signals for years. The warning signs are about to surface. Pull back 17 years to 62 AD and watch the ground beneath Pompeii split open. A massive earthquake strikes the Bay of Naples, damaging buildings throughout Pompeii, Herculaneum, and nearby towns. The Forum cracks, homes collapse. The Temple of Jupiter splits down the middle. Repair work begins immediately and continues for years. But the earthquake is not treated as a warning. It is treated as a disaster that happened and ended. Life continues. Buildings get rebuilt. Markets reopen. The city moves forward. Descend into the years between 62 AD and 79 AD and feel the slow build-up of signs that something is wrong. Small tremors that shake buildings but cause no major damage. Water sources that change taste or dry up completely, animals behaving strangely, and the mountain itself releasing occasional plumes of steam. Every sign is visible. Every sign gets noticed. But none of them are understood as connected because the people of Pompeii do not know what a volcano is. The word volcano does not exist in Latin. Vesuvius is simply mons, a mountain, a feature of the landscape, a source of fertile soil and beautiful views. Pliny the Elder, a Roman author who would die during the eruption, lived in the area and documented environmental changes in the years before 79 AD, including reports of springs drying up and unusual animal behavior. Some wealthy Pompeians built villas on the slopes of Vesuvius because the volcanic soil was exceptionally fertile and the views spectacular, treating proximity to the volcano as an advantage, not a risk. Imagine living where earthquakes happen occasionally, where water tastes different sometimes, where your dog acts nervous, and dismissing all of it as normal because you have no way to connect the dots. But on the morning of August 24th, 79 AD, the final warning arrives. At 1 p.m., the ground begins to shake violently. Then the top of Mount Vesuvius explodes into the sky. The warnings had been building for 17 years, but when the eruption finally began, it started with an explosion, heard over 100 miles away. Confusion will kill more people than the volcano. August 24th, 79 AD, 1 p.m. Across the Bay of Naples in Misenum, Pliny the Younger, a 17-year-old Roman, looks up and sees a cloud of unusual size rising from Mount Vesuvius. He describes it in letters written years later. Its shape resembled a pine tree spreading out in branches. At times, it looked white, at times dirty and spotted. The Plinian eruption column rises over 20 miles into the atmosphere, higher than modern passenger jets fly, and begins drifting southeast toward Pompeii. Descend into Pompeii as the eruption column blots out the sun, and ash begins to fall like grey snow. At first, people are confused. Some think it is a storm. Some run into streets to see what is happening. Others retreat into homes, believing the ash will pass. Then pumice stones begin falling, light volcanic rocks that accumulate on roofs and in streets. The stones are small at first, then larger, then heavy enough to collapse roofs if not cleared constantly. Feel the temperature rise. The air becomes harder to breathe. Ash clogs throats and lungs. Darkness, total darkness, falls over the city in the middle of the afternoon. The ashfall phase lasts 18 hours, burying Pompeii under 9 feet of pumice, enough to trap people inside buildings and make streets impossible to walk through. Some people flee immediately, others wait. That decision determines who survives. Confusion kills more people than the volcano itself, not because they were foolish, but because the situation was unprecedented and the correct choice was invisible. For 18 hours, Pompeii endured darkness and falling rocks. But at 6:30 a.m. on August 25th, the eruption column collapsed. A pyroclastic surge began racing down the mountain at 450 miles per hour. The point of no return has arrived. August 25th, 79 AD, 6:30 a.m. After 18 hours of continuous eruption, the eruption column reaches a critical height and collapses under its own weight. What happens next is a pyroclastic surge, a superheated avalanche of volcanic gas, ash and rock fragments traveling at speeds exceeding 450 miles per hour with temperatures reaching 500 degrees Celsius. The surge moves faster than any human can run, faster than any horse can gallop, and it kills everything in its path within seconds. Descend into Pompeii at the moment the surge hits and feel what the final seconds were like. The people who stayed in the city, sheltering in homes, hiding in cellars, waiting for the eruption to end, hear a sound like a freight train approaching. The air temperature spikes instantly. Then the surge arrives. Death is immediate. The heat is so intense that muscles contract, freezing bodies in poses that look like they are trying to shield themselves or flee. But there is no fleeing. There is no shielding. The surge is total. When it passes, Pompeii is silent. Pyroclastic surges are among the deadliest volcanic events, consisting of ground-hugging flows of hot gas and fragmented volcanic material that can reach speeds of 700 kilometers per hour. The surge killed everyone remaining in the city within seconds, not from burns, but from thermal shock and suffocation, as superheated air seared lungs and consumed all oxygen. Forensic analysis shows many victims died in positions suggesting they were trying to shield themselves, indicating the surge arrived with almost no warning. This is why Pompeii is preserved. People who stayed did not burn. They were buried under volcanic material that hardened around them, creating hollow spaces where their bodies once were. The eruption ended. Survivors fled. Within a generation, no one could remember where Pompeii had stood. The city was buried, forgotten, lost, until 1,700 years later, when workers discovered something impossible, a Roman city frozen in time. For 1,700 years, Pompeii remained buried under volcanic ash, completely forgotten by the world above. The eruption had dramatically altered the coastline, moving the sea kilometers away from where the bustling port once stood, and changed Mount Vesuvius itself from a single peak into a gaping crater. Survivors scattered to other cities and never returned. The Roman government made no attempt to rebuild. The wealthy town was simply abandoned and left to disappear beneath layers of ash and time. Over centuries, memory of its exact location faded so completely that people forgot an entire city had ever existed there. Then, in 1748, workers digging a canal near Torre Annunziata struck something unexpected beneath the ground. Walls decorated with bright frescoes, marble columns, and artifacts that clearly belonged to an ancient Roman city. Excavations began slowly, revealing not the scattered ruins that archaeologists typically find, but something far more extraordinary. A snapshot of daily life frozen at the exact moment it ended. Descend into the excavated streets of Pompeii today and feel what makes this archaeological site unlike any other ancient ruin on Earth. Walk past bakeries where bread still sits in stone ovens, the loaves carbonized but perfectly shaped, as if the baker stepped away for just a moment and never returned. Enter shops where wine amphorae still line the shelves, exactly as they were arranged on the morning of August 24th. Read the graffiti that still covers walls in charcoal and paint, election slogans promoting candidates for local office, love letters declaring eternal devotion, crude insults scratched into plaster by bored teenagers, shopping lists written on walls. See dice still sitting on gambling tables mid-game, coins scattered on counters, jewelry left on bedroom dressers, garden plants still identifiable from root casts that show exactly where flowers once bloomed. The most haunting discoveries are the bodies, or rather the hollow spaces left when human bodies decayed inside the hardened volcanic material. Giuseppe Fiorelli, an Italian archaeologist, developed an ingenious technique in 1863 where workers carefully pour liquid plaster into these human-shaped voids, creating eerily detailed casts that capture facial expressions, clothing folds, and body positions with unbearable clarity. Approximately 1,150 bodies have been discovered so far, though historians estimate the actual death toll was around 2,000 people. The volcanic ash created a completely oxygen-free environment that preserved organic materials, including wooden furniture, fabric clothing, food items, papyrus scrolls, and even human brain tissue in some extraordinary cases. But Pompeii's perfect preservation reveals something more disturbing than the disaster itself: normalcy. This city was not bracing for catastrophe or preparing for the end. It was simply living ordinary life. The deeper question is not what happened at Pompeii, but why. Why a city with clear warning signs chose to stay until it was too late. Rise above Pompeii one final time and confront the question that defines this entire tragedy and makes it relevant to every person alive today. Why did they stay? The eruption lasted a full 18 hours from start to finish. People had abundant time to gather belongings and flee to safety. Many residents did exactly that. Survivors were documented and interviewed in nearby towns like Stabiae and Nuceria. But approximately 2,000 people chose to remain in Pompeii until the final pyroclastic surge killed them in seconds. Why exactly did they make this fatal decision? The answer is not ignorance, superstition, or ancient lack of knowledge. The answer lies in fundamental human psychology that operates exactly the same way in modern disasters. Normalcy bias, the powerful mental tendency to underestimate the likelihood of disaster and automatically assume that life will continue following familiar patterns, kept people locked inside their homes, even as the sky turned completely black at midday and heavy pumice stones rained down with increasing intensity. They genuinely believed the eruption would stop on its own. They trusted that their stone homes were safe enough to provide adequate shelter. They calculated that they had plenty of time to wait out whatever was happening and return to normal life afterward. Walk through Pompeii's houses today and see the forensic evidence of these fatal miscalculations. Bodies are found huddled in interior rooms rather than near exits. Families died together in defensive positions, suggesting they were trying to shelter from falling debris rather than attempting to escape. Valuable objects remain in place, indicating people expected to return and retrieve them later. By the time residents realized the eruption was not stopping, the streets were completely blocked by accumulated ash. The city gates were impassable, and the deadly pyroclastic surge was already racing down the mountainside. This is not a story about ancient people making primitive mistakes based on outdated beliefs. This is a story about the exact same psychological mechanisms that keep modern populations living in active earthquake zones, building homes in hurricane-prone coastal areas, and refusing evacuation orders until emergency escape routes are already cut off. The belief that it won't happen to me operates just as powerfully today, even when scientific evidence clearly shows imminent danger approaching. Modern disaster psychology research confirms that even with sophisticated early warning systems, weather satellites, emergency broadcast networks, and mandatory evacuation orders, a significant percentage of at-risk populations consistently choose not to leave until escape becomes impossible. Hurricane Katrina, California wildfires, and Japanese tsunami evacuations all demonstrate identical patterns of human behavior that occurred in ancient Pompeii. Pompeii was not destroyed by a volcano. It was destroyed by the deeply human belief that tomorrow would resemble yesterday, that visible danger would somehow pass by, that normal life would continue, that there was always more time to make better decisions. That belief, more powerful than ash, heat, or the mountain itself, killed the town that never escaped. Pull back from Pompeii's frozen streets and soar above the Bay of Naples one final time. Mount Vesuvius still stands against the blue Mediterranean sky, its slopes green with vegetation, looking peaceful and harmless in the afternoon light, still active, still capable of another eruption, still dangerous. And at its base, modern Naples, a sprawling city of over 3 million people, lives in exactly the same shadow that Pompeii once did. The danger has not changed. The mountain has not become safer. The only difference is that today we know what a volcano is. We have early warning systems. We have evacuation plans. We have scientific knowledge that the Romans never possessed. But we also have the same psychology, the same normalcy bias, the same deeply human tendency to believe that disaster happens to other people in other times, not here, not now, not to us. Walk through Naples today and find millions of people living, working, raising children, building dreams in the exact same volcanic shadow that killed Pompeii. They know the risk. They understand the science, yet they stay, just like the people of ancient Pompeii stayed, because life must continue, and home is home, and tomorrow will probably be just like yesterday. Descend one last time into Pompeii's silent streets, and feel what this city represents beyond its archaeological value. Pompeii is not unique because it was destroyed. Cities have been destroyed throughout human history by war, earthquake, flood, and fire. Pompeii is unique because it was perfectly preserved, giving us an unfiltered window into the exact moment when normal life ended and absolute disaster began. Every unfinished meal carbonized in cooking pots, every body frozen mid-step while running toward exits that would never be reached, every child's toy abandoned in courtyards where laughter once echoed, every election slogan still painted on walls advertising political campaigns that would never be completed. Mount Vesuvius last erupted in 1944 and remains one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world, precisely because of the density of population living within its blast radius. Pompeii's excavation continues today, with approximately one-third of the city still buried beneath layers of ash, and new discoveries occurring regularly, including intact frescoes, complete family homes, and previously unknown streets. The site receives over 2.5 million visitors annually, making it one of the most visited archaeological sites in the world and a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1997. But the final truth is not that Pompeii was unprepared for disaster. The final truth is that preparation does not eliminate risk. Knowledge does not guarantee smart action. Warning systems do not automatically save lives. The gap between knowing danger exists and truly believing it will happen to you personally is the psychological space where disaster lives and thrives. Pompeii was not destroyed by ignorance or lack of information. It was destroyed by the deeply human belief that there was still time to wait and see, time to gather belongings, time to make better decisions, time to leave later when the situation became clearer. The danger was always there, visible on the horizon. The warnings were always present, documented and observable. The only thing missing was the moment it finally arrived. And when that moment came, moving at 450 miles per hour down the mountainside, it came faster than anyone could run, think, or change their mind. Pompeii is not a story about the past. It is a story about every present moment that believes it will become the future. The danger was visible. The warnings were documented. The people were intelligent, capable, and informed, and they stayed anyway, not because they were foolish, but because humans are wired to believe life will continue as it always has until the moment it doesn't. The eruption did not destroy Pompeii. The belief that tomorrow would be like yesterday destroyed Pompeii. We study Pompeii as if it represents a unique tragedy that could not be predicted. But the truth is uncomfortable. Pompeii had warning signs for 17 years: earthquakes, environmental changes, animal behavior. The people had information. What they lacked was the willingness to act before it was too late. The lesson is not, if only they had known. The lesson is, they did know, and it was not enough. Survival is not about knowledge. It is about the willingness to act on knowledge even when action feels irrational. Normalcy bias is the human instinct to preserve routine, even when routine becomes deadly. In the frozen streets, in the bodies curled in final moments, in the bread left in ovens, Pompeii holds proof that the end arrives not to those who ignore warnings, but to those who believe there is still time. We began with a normal day in a Roman town. Now we understand that every disaster begins the same way, with people trusting that tomorrow will resemble yesterday. Pompeii was not destroyed by a volcano. It was destroyed by the belief that it wouldn't be. Pompeii should have survived. The warnings were visible. The people had time. But time is not action, and knowledge is not belief. You now understand Pompeii's real lesson. This is how disaster happens to everyone. Share this story. Subscribe for more uncomfortable truths. What would you honestly have done?